No matter what, I'll always hate those monkeys. But it's not like I hate everyone at Jujutsu High. It's just that in this world, I couldn't truly be happy, from the bottom of my heart. These are the final words of Suguru Geto to Satoru Gojo, his best friend, his one and only. A final affirmation of his core tenets, showing no regret in the life he chose for himself, nor in the purpose he found. A purpose brought about through suffering, but one that allowed Geto to find some modicum of meaning in the cruel world of Jujutsu Kaisen. A world that spawned the inevitable fall of Suguru Geto. Where did this fall from grace begin? Was it when he snapped upon seeing the helpless Mimiko and Nanako? His revelation in the shower? The murder of Riko Amanai? No. The fall of Suguru Geto began at the very beginning of his life as a sorcerer, at his very acceptance into Jujutsu High. Jujutsu sorcery exists to protect the weak, to protect non-Jujutsu sorcerers. This is what Geto claims to believe is the true nature of the world upon entering Jujutsu Tech. A lie from the very beginning, one which hides his true feelings behind a veil of supposed duty and meaning. In opposition, Gojo acts mainly upon his own egoism, living for himself and his own personal goals. Each individually is a deeply flawed person, but together, they can keep each other in check. After all, they are the strongest, and together, they can live and smile, even in the accursed world they are a part of. So what would happen if, say, Geto was left to his own devices, without Gojo to act as his anchor? If he were faced with tragedy after tragedy, in an endless cycle of exercising and consuming? If he were left out in the rain, with no umbrella to halt the rusting of his very soul? Riko Amanai's death before his very eyes, his humiliating defeat at the hands of Toji, the clapping of the Star Religious Group. All it took was one bad day to send Geto into a spiral. In his life, Suguru Geto needs one thing and one thing only: purpose. Without purpose, why should one even exist in the world? His purpose is solely to protect the weak. This is why sorcerers exist. And this is the lie that Suguru Geto has told himself for his entire life. The lie he continues to propagate through the next year of suffering. In the shower, Geto makes his feelings known. He hears the clapping of that ignorant crowd, clapping which haunts him at every turn. His hatred for non-sorcerers, for those monkeys, grows every time he hears that applause. But still, those monkeys are the weak, right? They exist to be protected by the strong, even if they don't deserve it. This is why Suguru Geto exists in this world. To protect. Yuki Tsukumo turns Geto's worldview upside down. She confirms that cursed spirits only exist because of non-sorcerers, that the very people they protect are creating the curses which they need protection from. The curses that take the lives of countless young sorcerers. So, you could solve it by killing all non-sorcerers. Geto, that is possible. These are words Geto did not want to hear. Words filled with a potential new purpose. One which could completely overwrite his prior beliefs, his lie about how the world works. Without Gojo around, Geto has to contemplate these words all on his own. Hybera's death fuels Geto's hatred even further. Yet another smile that was inevitably washed away by this world of curses. A shining light, extinguished by a curse amplified by those monkeys around it. The strong, killed by the weak. What is his purpose? Mimiko and Nanako are the final straw for Geto. Upon seeing them, weak and helpless, horribly abused by the so-called weak non-sorcerers, a Suguru Geto who has been bent beyond the point of no return, finally breaks. He has confirmed his idea that the weak are not weak. Those who propagate this cycle of curses and hatred have power far beyond that of sorcerers. Why should the persecuted be the protectors? Why should those with money and influence be able to control the lives of the innocent? Why should Riko, and Hybera, and Mimiko, and Nanako all have to suffer and die so that these monkeys can live. 112. A number which one cannot come back from. A path to which there is no exit. But this is no problem for Geto. This is a choice, to forsake his former family for a new one. One which he accepts as sorcerers and true comrades. For the rest of his life, he will live without regret. One cannot talk about Geto without talking about Gojo. Gojo, who was so wrapped up in his own strength and growth, that he did not so much as notice Geto's fall until it was far too late. And at that breakup in front of the KFC, it is perhaps the most tragic moment of Gojo's life to this point. But for Geto, it is bittersweet. Sorrowful to say goodbye to the person he is closest to in the world, but in a way, joyful to have finally found a true purpose. He tells Gojo that he can kill him, that there would be meaning in that too. Geto knows that Gojo has his own purpose, just as he has found his. They can live meaningful lives, but they cannot do so together. Despite being so close, Gojo and Geto are vastly different people. In stark opposition to his genocidal tendencies, Geto is a deeply empathetic man. He truly does care about his comrades, the death of Riko haunting him for the rest of his life. Against Toji, he even asks about the well-being of Kuroi, somebody who he has grown to care about. Gojo, on the other hand, feels nothing for Amanai as he fights Toji, merely coming to an awakening of his own ego, an enlightenment which supposes himself as the strongest throughout heaven and earth. He is not heartless, of course, but he is also much more egocentric and much less empathetic than Geto. This empathy does not vanish when Geto becomes a curse user. He refers to his allies as his family, and makes no moves to attack the Jujutsu sorcerers until absolutely necessary for his goals to come to fruition. He spares the lives of Toge and Panda, not wanting to waste the lives of young sorcerers, of the very people he wants to make a better world for. He even offers Yuta Okotsu, an olive branch, to join him in order to lessen the deaths of sorcerers, and I have no doubt Geto would have allowed Yuta into his inner family. Suguru Geto's actions in JJK 0 are a culmination of his ideologies since his time as a student. In his own words, he fights for justice, to ensure that no Hyberas would ever lose their smiles again, that no lives like Riko's would ever be snuffed out right after finding purpose, that no Tojis would ever be born to curse the world again. All for a purpose he fights and dies for, a purpose he stands for until the bitter end. Geto was destined to fall down this path. His righteous ideologies as a sorcerer were impossible for any person to maintain, and Principal Yaga would never again make the mistake of allowing somebody with such goals to become a sorcerer. From the outside, Geto's fall seems like a true tragedy. But for Geto himself, the path he chose was no tragedy at all, but a blessing, one which he steadfastly believes in until the end. And at the end, after his loss to Yuta Okotsu, Geto, already half dead, is approached by Gojo. They both chose their own paths which led them here. And each of them could stand proudly in their beliefs, in their actions in the world. As Gojo says his final words to Geto, Geto finally smiles. Truly smiles, just like they did back then. You could at least curse me in the end.